Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. My name is Jason.
And my name is Steve.
And what we do here is I present a topic to Steve, which I planned ahead of time, but Steve has no idea about, and we talk about it for an hour or so. Today's topic is why Steve dislikes online dating.
And why do we do it that way where I don't know what you're going to be talking about?
It's more fun for me.
Okay. And I suppose it's in a way keeping me more spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of good.
Yeah.
When I'll just say to the listeners right now that, when Jason and I are talking about these things, and I share an opinion that's certainly not entirely professional, like why I hate online dating. It's really not from the point of view of, and I'm the expert and I know best, and don't you dare disagree with me. It's really part of a conversation, and and I can imagine that there might be many people out there listening to this saying, well, hold on a minute. That's how I met my wife, or that's how I met my husband. Mm-hmm. And I just, give a nod of the hat to those people. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm glad it's worked out. And I hope it continues to be just absolutely amazing. However, the reason I'm against online dating is the same reason I'm against a lot of behaviors that have a low probability of success. Mm-hmm. Like marrying your high school sweetheart, right out of the gate as soon as you're of age, and not dating anybody else. I think that that's not exactly a great strategy, but sure enough, there are those people down through the decades who've been known to pretty much all of us who've been together for 60, 70 years quite happily, or at least they report happily. And I don't have any reason to disbelieve them. So I suppose you can meet someone just about anywhere and in any way, and it could conceivably work out. But the reason I'm against online dating in brief is because I think it has a very low probability of a positive outcome. Mm. And why would that be true?
Yeah, let's get into this. But you say you create a profile, you got your profile picture, and then you have a few other photos of you.
Yeah.
And you tell people like what your favorite TV shows are. You put a little about section that's around maybe like 75 words or so. And then maybe you put in some other information about what type of music you like, or you give a general overview of who you are. And then you go out and then
you post that.
Yeah.
And women by the thousands start swiping left and right on that thing. And I have a chance to meet them. And again, not that I've done studies on this or that anyone else to my knowledge has, but let's just talk about this. What do I really know about the other person who is swiping in the appropriate direction? And what do I know about her? And the answer is, well, relatively nothing. This tiny little bit of information that they have chosen, they've cherry-picked for me. And maybe it's the person who's never liked classical music at all, who's written in that classical music is one of their favorite genres of music, or that they love to travel. And then you find out, well, they haven't traveled anywhere in the last 10 years. And so there's so much deception, including self-deception online, and just out and out lying. And even to including the picture, because I've talked to people who said she looked nothing like her picture. And then she told me that she used her cousin's picture because she had a better picture. And that somehow made sense. And so...
Well, that's why you meet them before you marry them.
So my counter offer to the people who are in love with this particular way of meeting people is this. It is a simple matter for me to demonstrate that anybody with a moderate level of social skills can go to any social gathering, and in 5 minutes of chatting with a man or a woman, find out so much more helpful information than you can find out online. And so I can approach a man. Let's say I'm heterosexual and I'm just approaching someone who looks interesting. As I try to meet some people at this barbecue where I know no one.
And how would you go about approaching that person?
Oh, it could be different for a lot of different ways, but one way would be to simply say, "So, hey, do you know the people who are putting this on?" Or because I don't know anybody, or hey, my name's Steve. What's yours?
All right.
And getting the conversation going, or looking at their plate laden with salad and saying, "So you're a vegetarian who came to a barbecue?" And just we have. What I find out in 5 minutes or less is he friendly or not friendly? Is he approachable or not approachable? Is he engaged by my sense of humor or not? Does he have his own sense of humor or not? Is he intelligent or not? And generally, I can also find out who he knows in terms of the host and hostess. I can find out if what he does for a living, and really all within 5 minutes. And I've learned so much about his personality and his character and the way he looks at things, and so much of who we are, right, is communicated non-verbally in our gestures, our facial expressions, the way we carry ourselves, our posture, the way we receive people coming and going around us. And I think you take all that skill set that most of us could reasonably comfortably have within the same gender. Mm-hmm. And then for the heterosexuals, reaching out to somebody of the opposite sex is exactly the same process. Because wouldn't I want to know all the answers to the same questions for an attractive person as I would for the guy who I was just chatting up? I want to know if she has a sense of humor. Is she approachable or not? Is she friendly or not? And also funny little deal breakers you can find out typically, especially at a barbecue, if it's outdoors, you're finding out, do they like to smoke? Do they drink? What does their voice sound like? I don't know, for those who are listening to this, have you ever walked up on somebody who was absolutely attractive only to find out they had a voice like a cartoon character and not a good one? So you couldn't imagine yourself having sex with that person. It just would feel too much like lusting after Minnie Mouse or something like that. So, there's, I think to me, then that in itself would be worth so much more than swiping left or right on a website. But there's actually so much more going on there because I'm exponentially increasing my outreach by every time I talk to a man. For me as a heterosexual, talking to other men, whether they're gay or straight, doesn't matter. I'm letting other men know who I am, what I'm like. I'm making more social connections. And then those men are going to have their own social circles. And those, they are likely to remember me or to introduce me if some of their friends come up and start talking to them. And so unlike, say, swiping left or right, where once you swipe left, that's the end of her, and that connection is now no longer of any significance. Once she's rejected you, once you've rejected her, that's it. We're done. But with somebody at a party, if I met a woman who was really a terrific person, but just not for me for whatever reason, that doesn't mean I don't know 5 or 10 single guys I would want to introduce her to who might think she's amazing and absolutely perfect for them. So we exponentially increase our outreach as we start building our social circles. And we do that by doing what a social species does naturally. We behave in a sociable manner and we start talking to people around us. So it's only hard for the people who are painfully shy and for people who, like me, are introverts, because I do get burned out during the week when I'm talking to, say, 50 different people or 100 different people. And then I want to really go be quiet on the weekends and kind of, pull a rock over my head and just rest. But for me, I remember being single, and I always had at least one outing per week where I was meeting other people, even if it was just going out with the guys for dinner or for a beer and, yucking it up and having a fun time at some venue. And inevitably we would meet other people as they would come in and out through that particular establishment. And there was always the meeting of new people. So I think we undersell the old fashioned route. And I know it sounds perhaps hopelessly old fashioned, but how when you meet some women, I mean, they could look great in a photograph, or even you might really love what it is she wrote about herself. But if you were to meet the same person, you might have a completely different reaction because of this thing our grandparents used to call chemistry. You just, she might have been amazing and maybe she really is wonderful, but it's just you and she just didn't make the magic come together.
Yeah.
And there are like so many variables that could make that happen or fail to happen. And I think that we only find out when we're actually interacting with this person.
Yeah. From what I hear from you, it sounds like you're a person who likes people living their lives, like in real life, like not behind like a screen.
Or yes, like, IRL. I do like people living their lives.
And because when you're online, I guess you could say, well, you could have access to all these people and you can go meet them up for coffee. And then you do see if you do have that connection or that match or the chemistry.
Right.
And then you do get to see if you can have conversation.
Well, what's going to happen. I mean, with the new virtual reality goggles from, I think it was Apple, people are going to start having barbecues and cocktail parties virtually. And it's like, I suppose for some people, it'll feel safer because they can check in or check out. And just by pulling off their goggles and they've stepped out of the room, a little bit like one of the Sims games or Second Life. But I don't think there's really any substitute for the way our brains and our bodies have evolved in terms of collecting data.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like running on a treadmill does not stimulate the brain anywhere near the same way as running on a mountain trail. And it's the same with typing on a keyboard does not stimulate the brain the same way as pen to paper and just writing longhand or even printing. We learn differently, we collect information differently, and I think trusting a million years of evolution to have come up with something good, so much better maybe than Silicon Valley has come up with in the last couple of years. It's just that I think we have reasons for not doing the face-to-face real-time meetups.
Yeah, well, there's something to it. There's definitely something to your theory because a lot of people, when they are online dating, they talk about how horrible it is. They talk about how it gets depressing. Like I've been on it and it does feel like you're shopping for humans, like left to right, it's you don't feel that great. And I don't think anyone does really. Or right. I mean, maybe some people do, but I mean, I've heard a lot of people saying that it doesn't necessarily do wonders for their mental health.
It's a little bit like shopping for books online. I think when you go to a website like Amazon and you have a specific title in mind, okay, I get that. That makes sense. But when you just want to browse the biography section or to see what novels are new, Amazon doesn't really cut it compared to going into a good bookstore. So I prefer the bookstore approach.
Yeah.
To really shopping for, what's the latest or what's happening. Even I would say another ancient device called the newspaper would be superior to going to Amazon because you have these amazing book reviewers who actually are reading all of these books and writing upon them. And the 9 new books we're recommending this month, or the best books in Persian poetry, or whatever it is that they're reviewing, and you're listening to the words of an expert who's been going through this literature and communicating to you as if they were sitting right by your side, telling you their deepest thoughts on this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I appreciate the internet to no end. I think it's fantastic and it's amazing in so many ways. But I would think shopping for humans is not the best way to use the internet. I do think there are other ways of using the internet, though, to meet people that do make sense.
Like the meetups.
I love that app. I love meetups because you're using the internet in a really safe way to pursue a group of people with whom you share a common interest, or you think you might share a common interest. Like, say, there's a hike going on in a local park, or there's some sort of a book club going on, or some other activity. And then you're meeting men and women. Typically, they're co-ed. So you're meeting men and women who share this common interest, but you're using the internet for the sake of convenience, because not all of those groups are in a newspaper. In fact, very few of them nowadays are. And you'll be finding out about groups that would never have been listed in the newspaper. I saw one the other day that was for free thinkers, and it included atheists, agnostics, and basically anybody else who wanted to engage in free conversation about important topics. And it makes sense to me that you wouldn't see that on your church bulletin, and you wouldn't see that, maybe at your school. And unless you know one of the 50 to 100 people who are attending their group meetings, you just would never find out about it. So I do like the internet, but I just think it has to be used strategically and not as a substitute for real life.
Yeah. But it's like you could find your wife without even leaving the couch. Is that appealing to you?
No, it's not appealing to me. It's really not appealing to me because, one of the things about being in real life, as I said about when it comes to running a treadmill versus a mountain trail, or writing on a keyboard versus by longhand, I think there's a different mental process that goes into getting to know someone. And I think it's more complex, it's more intriguing, and it has so many other more possible successful outcomes other than romance. What if you just met somebody who turned out not to be the right romantic partner, but was the perfect conduit to your next job? And so when you're spending an hour on an app swiping left and right, you're really kind of doing some sort of sexual doom scrolling. I think that would be the way to characterize it. You're just looking, but you're not actually interacting with anyone. Even if you give them a poke and smile and say, hey, how's it going? And that's not exactly intimate or intelligent conversation.
But you can have intelligent. I met some pretty good people on there. I'll say that.
Well, and again, it's not
doable.
It's doable, but it's kind of like that old saw about even a broken clock is right twice a day. It's possible, but it's also possible to just be in the parking lot outside Trader Joe's and meet your next wife.
Well, I think the thing is,
but I wouldn't recommend hanging out in the parking lot to do that.
That's my next thing that I'll be doing next weekend.
That's not creepy at all.
Hanging out by the car,
standing there looking lonely and forlorn.
I'll just put a watch on and just look at it every so often. Just pretend I'm waiting for someone.
Right.
But I think, for me, like I grew up with it. I guess to tell you my experience, I grew up with it when I was around 23 or 24. It came into my life and I made the profile, and I've spoken to lots of women with there and went out with various women that I've met on there, but I've never actually had a sustainable girlfriend from there. So like I've met people that I've dated for a little bit and talked to, but I never met a girlfriend that way, which isn't to say that it's not possible, but
Yeah, because some people get married.
yeah. But I have had it where the photos don't line up exactly, but I've had pretty good luck with it for the most part.
Well, you say that, but if I asked you, how many hours would you estimate that you spent online looking at photos and swiping left and right and then chatting and exchanging greetings with these people and then going on the dates? And at the end of all of that, I'm guessing it's been hundreds of hours over the years.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Right. And I think you would have, in terms of, what we often hear about the internet is the term efficiency. It's so much more efficient. But I would argue, no, it's actually much more efficient to have a real social life.
Yeah.
And to be going out and meeting people that way, and to actually travel and go to other places and meet people that way. And that you'll actually probably spend far fewer hours per successful relationships.
Yeah.
In terms of getting something going. So that's just my take on it. Now, I am as old as, gosh, can be, and yet I still live. And my clients quite often are very young, and they're much more comfortable with the approach you're talking about. These are the same clients, sadly, who are often incels. They are often using the internet as a way to avoid in-person connecting. And they, because of the way they use the internet, rely on the internet and depend on the internet, they've never really developed a life worth living. They asked, well, do you have friends? Oh, yeah, I've got lots of friends. Oh, who are your friends? Well, I don't know their real names.
Yeah, all the
aliases and they're all over the country or all over the world. And so what are you going to share with that future significant other? Who are you going to introduce her to? Whose house are you going to go over and have a barbecue with to introduce her to all your friends? Oh, nobody, because you don't have a life. You don't have a life worth living. You don't have anything worth sharing. And that poor, wretched woman, if she were to sign up for somebody like that, she would find out, oh my God, this guy's an incel, or he's totally on his own, or he's nice and everything, and then he doesn't really have a life outside of me. And I think most women would resent that. At least the healthy women would resent that. I think there's some unhealthy women who would love that because that
she's
means
a gamer.
That would mean she's everything, But for the healthy woman who wants to be a wonderful part of your otherwise wonderful life, probably going to be meeting those kind of women in real life.
Yeah. Well, I understand your viewpoint. I see it now. And I haven't been online dating I stopped doing it, and I don't plan on.
How long has it been since you did it?
I went on back when I was in Chicago just because I was an idiot. And that's even dumber because it's like I was just visiting there. I was just like, because you just get like, I don't know, I was still working through some stuff.
Sure.
But it's like, I'm just like, let me just see, because I'm curious to see who's out there, like thinking, because it does kind of trap your mind to think it's like playing the lottery or something like that. Like, oh, who knows when I'm going to match with, the one or whatever, or whatever you want to say. And
I know it's a long shot, but maybe this could happen.
Yeah. It's like, maybe if I'm out here or if I'm on vacation, it's like, you just never know who you'll happen to meet. But I don't know, like just for being on it for as long as I have, and from talking to you and just thinking about it myself. And I didn't really enjoy really going up to people and talking to them either. I felt like I'd be like a bother to them.
You mean like at a party or something?
At a party or just being out, I felt like I had a lot of those feelings to kind of work through. Just probably maybe like shyness or insecurities, but it feels like that sort of was holding me back. And if I want to evolve and I want to like have a life and do that sort of stuff. I need to go out and talk to people and engage with them. And it doesn't have to be this thing like we talk about. Like, you don't have to go up to the person and be like, hey, you want a date? You know, like, you just have like a conversation, like you said with the barbecue. Hi, I'm whatever, my name, what's your name? Or make a joke or do something to just have a friendly conversation with the person. And I think by learning that skill is healthier for me, at least. I mean, just seeing it for myself, because it's like, well, what's the alternative? Well, I just continue to do online dating and I don't go out. And when I do go out, it's like, yeah, I'm going out doing things, but I'm like, well, I'm not going to talk to anyone because I don't know if they're single or not, or whatever their deal is.
Right. Well, whether they're single or not, whether they're wearing a ring or not, doesn't really matter, because you're just making small talk. And in defense of the skill of small talk, it's a basic social skill that allows us to sniff each other's feathers for a minute and see if this person is interesting or not, intelligent or not, has a sense of humor or not, whether or not he or she is approachable. And there's so much I learn in the making of small talk. And the people who don't know better often poo-poo small talk as if it's a disgraceful activity because it's somehow superficial. Well, it's superficial by design. That's a feature, not a bug. Mm-hmm. So it's superficial so that we can both feel relatively safe as we get to know each other a little bit. And I mean, how weird and creepy would it be to have some woman come up to you and say, so do you ever wish you were married? I think that would be really scary. And for me, one of the big gifts in learning to make small talk and socializing is really relearning the wonder of the human race, because I don't have to, like in Glengarry Glen Ross, I don't have to always be closing. I don't have to get a number. I don't have to get a date.
Yeah.
I don't have to find out if she's really into me. I can just enjoy the pleasure of the banter and the going back and forth. And that's an end in and of itself.
Yeah.
Including going up to somebody I find interesting, male or female, and finding out, oh, they're standoffish, they're not friendly, they're really there against their will, their spouse made them come, they can't stand being there, and they've always hated people. And so, you meet those two, and after a while, you figure out, okay, so that's not about me. That's about them.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I failed or that I didn't have the right skills to get them to be friendly or to like me. It's just who they are. And I think that's a real gift to somebody who's new to this kind of socializing.
Yeah. And I think it helps you. I know it helped me. Like if I started, I have been pushing myself to talk to more people and engage with them more. And it's rewarding for yourself because you're like, well, it's not that scary.
Right. Well, like any fear, once faced, it becomes significantly less fearsome.
Yeah. And then when you've done some stuff, I mean, maybe if you're like, I don't know, you could always find something about you that's interesting to talk about. But it's like now that I'm older, thankfully, like 39, it's like I have some things that I could say that make me kind of an interesting person, at least interesting enough to approach somebody.
Well, let's say you were at a very special wine tasting and you're standing there, and one by one, the guys are introducing themselves in your little small circle of guys who don't know each other. And it's Warren Buffett and Bill Gates.
Yeah.
And
that's typically who I hang out with.
Yeah. And Jeff Bezos. And then somebody says, so Jason, what do you do for a living?
Uh-huh.
Now, do I have a shame attack because I don't make gazillions of dollars? I don't think men really establish their worth that way, at least not normal men. Even if they themselves are billionaires, they don't evaluate people on the basis of how many millions or billions they have.
Yeah.
It's to me an exercise in learning to let go and socialize and be comfortable within my own skin. And it's the same with, if I'm talking to an absolutely stunning woman who's so very intriguing and interesting, and then one by one her girlfriends start coming around and we're all talking as a group, I don't need to panic, like, oh my God, how am I going to ask them all out?
Without them knowing.
Yeah, of course. But can I just relax and enjoy the pleasure of getting to know them? And the same thing with the guys. Now, I acknowledge that within our human race, there's some really bad actors, right? There are going to be some horrible people who are really loving, holding their nose in the air and snubbing people they assume to be lesser beings. And those two offer their own kind of recreational purpose because they're fun to watch. And they're fun to poke holes in, and they're fun to engage. But then we get lucky. I often fantasize about meeting somebody like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because the guy is so smart and he has so much to say, and there's so much going on in his mind on any given day, as you can tell from his Substack, that meeting him at a party, I mean, first of all, number one, just to meet him would be a pleasure, but to just shut up and listen to him, which is what I think I would do most of the time, is if he was holding court talking to, a few other people, and I chanced upon the outer rim of that little group, and I could sit there and listen, or stand there and listen to him talk, I would do just that. And that in itself becomes a story that I share later, right? And the same thing with anybody else who's so insightful, or who has so much to say, or has such an intriguing story, that I just want to enjoy the pleasure of listening. I don't actually have to talk if the other person is really going to town with something that's amazing. So, sometimes, and the talking is really pretty entry level, right? It's like, it's not table tennis, it's ping pong. So we just are volleying back and forth in a friendly sort of a way. And if it's not enjoyable and not friendly, I get to say, well, thanks. It's been great talking to you. I got to go now. Yeah. And you excuse yourself and move on, and see if there's anybody at that damn party who's worth getting to know from your perspective, Yeah. And that's okay, because that's something that we learn is, oh, this group is really not for me. Or I don't really enjoy this particular tribe. Yeah. So for me, it would I laugh at myself a lot, because it seems like I'm missing a lot of genes as a man. I don't like fast cars. So going to a big drag racing event or some other kind of race car event would be endlessly boring for me. So I don't know if I would enjoy the conversations at those venues. And it would be the same with so many other venues that I can think of. I've tried to watch professional sports. I've tried to enjoy it. And
you don't watch any sports?
I don't. I don't. And I don't really feel like I'm missing anything.
Well, I wonder what Kareem would say about that.
Yeah, I know, right? He'd probably have an explanation, and he'd probably help me out, figure out what's going on. But, I think whatever it is you're into and whatever it is you're not into, finding your own tribe, because every group has wonderful people in it. And every group has horrible people in it. Yeah. So it could be a church group or a sports group or a political group. It just doesn't matter. Because whenever you get a large enough group of people around, there's going to be wonderful people and horrible people and the rest of us in between.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of this stuff, I think for me, I mean, I think people who are doing it aren't doing those things. Or maybe sometimes people too will say, well, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time for a social life. I'm busy with work or school. Or what would you say to those people who are just like, it's easier, it's more convenient
to swipe left and right?
Yeah.
So Lee Iacocca had something to say about this years ago. I remember reading a quote from him. He said, if you're too busy for your friends, then you're just too busy.
Okay. So don't even bother with it.
No, he would say, stop. If you're that busy, don't be that busy.
Okay.
Go be with some friends. I mean, get a life. Yeah. Because we don't live so we can work ourselves into an early grave. We work so that we might have enough sustenance to provide for a comfortable life. And at some point, it's time to kind of relax and let go and go spend some time with your friends. My argument for that, and I practice what I preach, and my argument there is I regularly socialize, and I do it very mindfully because it is so easy for me to avoid it because I feel very self-sufficient on my own and I don't get lonely. I have a great marriage, and my wife is kind of like me, but we both make the effort to get out and mix with friends because my experience has been not only is it pleasurable, but my friends are also responsible for helping making me a smarter man. They stimulate my brain. They force me by sharing their own opinions to look at things from a different perspective. And they so often have these, very wonderful things to say that I never would have thought of. So I think we all need great friends. And, the thing for men, I think in particular is, we'd be on the lookout for men who help us become better men. And if we don't have any of those kinds of men in our lives, then we really don't have any real friends. So, and socializing with those guys is going to end up inevitably leading to meeting women and dating and that kind of a thing. So yeah, I'm kind of against the whole internet dating thing, and I'm very bullish on doing it the old-fashioned way, with flesh and blood, meeting flesh and blood, and just having it out.
Well, it seems like a lot of this stuff too, I see your take on it is tied to the concept that you have of creating a life worth living. Like we kind of hit on that a little earlier, but if you're just sitting there swiping and going on dates and you're just not, I don't know. I don't think you're living as much as you can. Like for me, it's like, okay, go out to a bookstore, go out to see a show, go to a play, go to go to an art museum, go here. It's like you could plan all these activities and take the idea of meeting somebody out of the equation and just live your life and be open to meeting anybody and be comfortable to approach them if the situation arises, with which it probably would if you just trusted if you just trusted that it would.
Yeah, if you can relax at the museum and go to the restaurant, and you keep going to the same museum over and over through the year, looking at different exhibitions, and you're going to be meeting staff, you're going to be meeting regular patrons of the museum. And that's just one little tiny example of what I would hope people would make into part of their lifestyle, to engage in those activities they find pleasurable, whether it's sports or museums or anything else.
Yeah, or hiking or going to a baseball game or
pretty much anything. But I mean, what woman out there really wants to know all about the best TV shows I've watched the last week?
A lot of them.
No, it's not true.
It is. Women like TV.
What do you like to watch on TV? I suppose that could be a qualifier, but I don't want to know about her TV viewing.
Yeah.
I really want to know more about her because, and so it just seems like something people do alone at home. When they're in front of their TV, they watch a show and then they kind of drift into the next show or something else because
they binge it.
Yeah, because they're exhausted and they have nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. Yeah. So for those, I would be more interested in a book reader, I suppose, because again, it engages the brain in a more active way. And well, what kinds of things do you like to read? And then that's more intriguing, I think.
Yeah.
What kinds of TV shows do you like to read or watch?
Yeah.
Oh, game shows. I love game shows.
Yeah.
or what do they call them? Telenovelas. I love watching romance. I love watching. I don't know that there's any genre of TV viewing that would really be worth more than a couple of sentences back and forth. It doesn't give me much insight into the person.
Yeah.
But but
sometimes if you know the lines of the show and they know the lines of the show, that's a real deep connection that you form.
I'll take your word for that.
And if you don't know them, then that could also be like, oh, this guy's not for me.
Yeah. And I've had that experience with my clients who quoted a movie or something and then looked at me blankly like, he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, not the therapist for me. I think for parents too out there, though, the idea that it's very loving as a parent to be aware of your son or daughter's lack of friends and to pay a close attention to that and to their social skills. Because if your child is coming home from school and avoiding other children, watching TV a lot, and that's pretty much all they do, maybe they're getting great grades, but if they don't have their own reasonable social life, you're not really fulfilling your job, I think, as a parent, in making sure your child has the basic social skills to get their needs met, their needs for friendship, for connecting with other human beings, for being able to navigate through the world of work and like doing interviews for jobs and all the rest of it. I think friends and playing with friends and hanging out with friends is really an essential for all of us who are parents and wish our children to be successful. We have to teach them how to do that or make provision for it. And if necessary, to engage in remedial education if a child is stuck and doesn't know what to do, or, as is so often the case in this modern age, a child is stuck with bullies at school and is really getting blocked from having a normal social life, to take a look at that and figure out a solution. And the solution may be changing schools or a pep talk, or maybe it's just flat out boxing lessons.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Get him in the ring.
Okay, I want you to wear all of these rings next week. Hit him as hard as you can. But whatever it is, whatever the answer is, I think this is for a social species to be incapable of socializing. Oh my God.
Well, that's what's kind of happening in a pretty big scale with social media and online dating and a lot of things.
So I work with a lot of individuals who have been convicted or are on the verge of being convicted of sexual crimes. And most of the time, they have an extremely limited social life. Far more often than not like 60%, but more like 90% of the time, they have no real friends. 90% of the time, they've never asked a woman out, or if they've asked a woman out, it has never been a successful date or an enjoyable experience. And so for my clients, I see the need for social skill education being primary. And we know this from, books that a lot of us focus on IQ as a measure of future success or a predictor of future success. But really, emotional intelligence and social intelligence are far more predictive of success than just raw IQ. Intellectual intelligence is wonderful, and I wish I had more. But I know people who are a lot smarter than I am who have never had a successful relationship. I mean, not with anybody.
Yeah.
Not even for a limited time. So this is an area of life that needs to be addressed. And for the parents out there who have children who are not really showing themselves to be normal in this way, it's time to go out and get a therapist. And if you don't know what to do, maybe you need to get some help yourself. And for those of us who are adults who are struggling in this area, I think it is important to do what we can to fix it on our own by doing what you're doing, Jason, and just maybe kicking up our game a little bit mindfully. Or if we need to go get some professional help, just have at it. Just go have a few sessions with a therapist who can give us some pointers on where to begin.
So you think that the social aspect of it all is healthy for humanity?
Yes. If I were a horse, I'd be stomping my hoof on the ground right now. Because of course, it's mission critical. We all need to get comfortable talking to what I would call the normal people of the world. And because I know there are mean people, there are paranoid people, there are lots of people with lots of impairments, but to be able to at least hold a decent conversation and feel comfortable in your own skin while you're doing it, every kid should learn how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I like it too. It's just, as far as like stopping online dating, and
And going cold turkey.
well, just like planning different things to do. I think I kind of just, again, relate a lot of this to the creating a life worth living. Like, what can I do that I want to do that I haven't been doing? And just because I think it's a part of, like, would you say, so in the pursuit of love, would you say that you have it seems like a healthier way in the pursuit of authentic love and authenticity in yourself to go out and do these things that you find enjoyable and interact with people socially?
Yeah, who also find that activity enjoyable,
Yeah.
or at least they thought they would love learning to make Swedish meatballs.
Mm-hmm.
At the cooking class with you. They thought it would be enjoyable, and it turns out you're both bored, or one of you likes it and the other one doesn't, but you at least had in common some curiosity about how to do that. And I think, it's just so banal and that it's underrated, but it's banal because it's commonplace for humans to do human things, and I can hardly think of anything more human than socializing. So in my office, we often talk about intimacy skills, and intimacy skills would be those social skills that have a romantic or sexual agenda, like making intimate disclosures or initiating a date, that kind of thing, being able to set boundaries in a romance, being able to terminate an unsuccessful or unsatisfying romance. And those kinds of skills are essential, but they get taught at the introductory level with friends and acquaintances outside of the world of romance and sex. So we all need to be able to do all those things to initiate socializing, invite a friend out to go to a movie, invite your buddies out for a drink or for breakfast or something like that, to be able to invite a bunch of friends out to a puzzle room and have some fun doing that thing, cracking the puzzle, and being able to do all of that and learn how to, let go and have fun, and and to not be the smartest guy in the room, but just to be a beginner at, say, rock climbing, or I really want to learn how to, how do you find arrowheads anyway? I never see those on the ground. And there are people who are really good at all that stuff, and they've really got it figured out, and they love sharing that information, and it's all outside of the context of romance and sex. But easily applicable later on if you want to share that with someone you're interested in, whatever it might be. And, it's not like we all need to be fakes and we all need to like put on airs, or everybody needs to like the opera as much as Stephen Ing likes the opera. No, it's just learning how to be comfortable with being yourself. And I guarantee for every pot, there is a lid. It's an old Kurdish saying, and I think it's true. We all have so many people who are like-minded, who would love to share experiences with us, whether it's buddies in a platonic way or potential romantic partners. There's just that much diversity, but we're all that much alike that we'll be able to find friends and romantic possibilities out there if we can just be more social in real life. And that's my final word on the subject.
And then in terms of just managing love intelligently, you would see being in real life more so a way of doing that. You would recommend that
absolutely
to people.
If I'm not even living my life, how can I even begin to think about sharing my piece of crap life with somebody else? It would be so utterly empty and boring if I don't have anything that I enjoy or anyone that I enjoy in my life. It makes no sense at all. Why would you do that to some poor woman?
Yeah.
Why would you make her share that? It's like, you found this wretched, disgusting TV dinner in the trash, but you're willing to share it. And for some of us, that's our life. I mean, I know guys who live in tiny little apartments and never go anywhere unless they absolutely have to, say, perhaps buy groceries or something.
Yeah.
And they just, they would like to have a romance. They would like to be meeting people. And they're living their life as if, well, that could happen magically. I mean, something, I could meet somebody at the grocery store in the produce department, of course, while we're checking out the fruit. Oh, the fruit. It's so lovely this season. No, it's, it might happen. And it could even happen in the asphalt parking lot, but not likely to happen.
Yeah. So you got to get out there, do things that you love to do, have new experiences, and be able to socialize or be comfortable with just saying hi to somebody. Like, do you encourage your clients to practice that if they're out in public, to like talk to people?
To the degree that they can. I have a lot of clients who have avoidant personality disorder, and they're just so painfully shy and avoidant. And there's therapy for this, and it can be cured. But avoidant personality disorder, like every other personality disorder, typically takes 3 to 5 years to overcome. And it's very challenging for people because they have to face chronically a fear of being judged or looking inadequate or looking foolish. And it takes a lot of courage for them to engage in the therapy, because the end result of the therapy is to do the thing you're terrified of.
Yeah.
Who wants to sign up for something like that? It takes a lot of guts for any man or woman out there to seek out therapy for avoidant personality disorder. And yet, it's such a very common disorder, especially in my practice, which is primarily a forensic practice, where I work with so many people who've had tremendous sexual difficulties because, they've been so isolated and alone. And so their sex life has deteriorated to the point where it's pretty much them and the internet. And that's it.
Yeah. So if you don't want that life, you got to get out there.
Well, yeah, or do something. I mean, you got to do something thoughtful. Like maybe it means asking for help from a therapist, but and I think I've gone to therapy and I found it very beneficial and very helpful. And I've gone to self-help groups like Al-Anon and Adult Children of Alcoholics. I want to give a shout out for them because you can't beat the price. It's free. And the people are generally wonderful and extremely helpful in terms of helping you grow and change.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll wrap up there. And to end, we have a listener question. And if you have a question for Steve, you can visit steveading.com and fill out the contact form. This week's question reads as follows. Hi, Steve. My wife and I have gone to 3 different therapists in the last 10 years, and we can't even get a call back in our recent attempt to find a new one. It's been very frustrating. Our friends who have gone to couples therapy haven't been very impressed either. My question is, why is it like this?
Boy, that is a really great question. And I have to agree with whoever wrote that in because it's so common nowadays. Some of it's just demographics. There were a large number of therapists who entered the field in the early 60s for historic reasons. And then they all retired at approximately the same time within a few years of each other. So there was a huge drop-off in the number of therapists, but not a huge drop-off in the population of the United States. So the population is underserved. And finding a therapist, it's not just finding a therapist, it's also finding a good therapist. It's like any other profession, there are lawyers and then there are good lawyers, and there are doctors and there are good doctors. And we just don't want, it's like finding a girlfriend or a boyfriend for someone. We don't just want one, we want the right one.
And how do you determine that as a patient?
Well, it's so very challenging, but I think asking a few questions at the time you get on the phone with someone, or even for some people in their practice, they do have an openness to taking new clients through the internet portal. And if there's a way to ask a few questions in writing or to read their website and see what their background is, and to see if it sounds like it would work for you. I think that could be very helpful. Also, if you have something in your life going on that's particular to you and not a real common problem like anorexia or bulimia or some other eating disorder, I think finding a therapist who advertises that they specialize in that would be most helpful. However, there are those therapists, and you'll see that I think psychology today is a really good place to go looking for therapists. And particularly if you can find somebody who's been writing articles in the area that you're looking for help in, because if they have the time to be writing articles, obviously they have time for a new client. That's my thinking. And as you read the article, if you like their thoughts, if you like their philosophy, you probably want to connect with them. And nowadays, you can connect with a therapist even over the telephone and do teletherapy. Although generally, because of the law right now, if you're using insurance to pay for that, it would have to be billed only as coaching, professional coaching, because therapists are licensed state by state, and they're forbidden to practice therapy outside of their state. So if a person in New York is looking for a therapist in California, they might find a wonderful therapist, but they can't expect to be submitting a bill to their insurance. The other thing I think that,
but they can for coaching, or
well, coaching. No, they
pay
coaching.
out of pocket.
They pay out of pocket for coaching,
but it's the same. It's just somewhat similar.
It would be really. I don't see how a therapist could stop being a therapist. With
it's
somebody.
like a whistle, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe they could do something like that, dress up in a costume. But, I think, but finding a good therapist or the right therapist for you, where it's a good fit and you're getting the help that you need, it is just challenging. And my heart goes out to the people who are looking. I do think people also could benefit from asking around, but it's a very personal thing, isn't it? My husband and I are crazy. Where do you go when your husband and you are crazy?
Yeah.
I think that's challenging. But if, people in your group, in your friend group, are talking about how great therapy is or how it's really helping them, to ask them what do they like about it and a few more questions, and to see if that therapist is right for you. I hasten to add, and I know for a fact that there are many not just neutral therapists out there, but truly horrible therapists out there who have no business being in the field. And I think people need to understand caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, before they spend too much money. And I think also there are agencies around that can make referrals. Hopefully you could, call up different sources in your community to find someone who will make a referral for you. And if a really good therapist really appeals to you over the phone, but they're too busy to make an appointment, often they can make a referral. Mm-hmm. And if you use that therapist's name, often you'll have a better chance of having a connection with a busy therapist than if you were just calling on your own. So I wish the writer good luck in this, but it is without a doubt a very challenging thing.
Yeah. So we just need a lot more therapists out there.
We do. And I wish a lot more marriage and family therapists were open to doing forensic work, because I think they're ideal for that kind of work. And sadly, they get misinformed at school very often that they are not. Mm. And it is just the opposite. They would be very well trained for looking at a problem, from a family systems point of view. So I really like being a therapist. I wish there were more therapists, but I also cringe when I think of people getting therapy from somebody who's just not competent. So people need to be aware and regularly ask themselves, was that helpful? And one last caveat I'm going to share with everyone is for a lot of historic reasons, religion and therapy have been at odds with one another, and sometimes to the point where a lot of people who are very religious have decided to become therapists so they can still share their religious message. And I would just urge everybody who's looking for therapy to remember that religion and psychotherapy are two very different worlds. And they really need to not overlap unless you're seeking pastoral counseling.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right. Well, thank you for that question. And as always, thanks, Steve. And we'll catch you all later.
Bye now.